Sports podcast.
With your new haircut. Look at this haircut.
Why not give you a cheeky one for all sports?
Yeah.
Are we chatting about your fresh trim, are we?
Yeah.
It's good, mate.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, lads. I did my best for you lot.
Who are you trying to impress?
5,500 followers. Welcome to the All Sports podcast with me, Matt, and today, Joel. How are you, mates?
All good, thanks, Matt. How are you?
Yeah, all good. And Bowie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you, mate?
Really good. So it is transfer deadline day in football, and we've had some other big transfer news elsewhere in the world of sport, but we'll get straight into the football. Biggest news of the day. Probably Tottenham have been a little bit busy, and they've got one of the highest potential wingers, I think, probably in world football at the moment, in Matthias Tel.
Yeah, I didn't know a lot about him until this transfer window, but then he got linked with absolutely everybody.
Yeah. I think once you realise that a player of that, because you see his highlight reel is very, very good. A player of that pedigree is apparently on the market. And then people decide, yeah, that's it. Like we've spoken about before, when the stars align for you to actually get someone that you need, he's the sort of player that a lot of teams need because he's got age on his side, he's got the talent, he's got the experience with Bayern, he's got a couple of seasons under his belt with them, and he's on form, and he gets a ton of goals too, and nice goals.
Do Spurs need him? That's the question.
I think Spurs are slightly on decline when it comes to attacking options. I know they beat Brentford, but I think they scraped through that game anyway. And even with Tell, I think he's a decent young player, but I wouldn't say he's that exciting because if he was, he would be playing for Bayern. You know, he would be starting games. I mean, of course, like any young player, he makes mistakes. And you mentioned his highlight reel. Trust me, mate, you can make a highlight reel for loads of different players. Anthony's highlight reel would justify spending 5 mil because he scored some bangers.
So maybe it's a similar thing. It was an easy person to get, and maybe similar to Anthony. Like maybe there's a little bit of risk that's involved.
Of course.
However, doing nothing in the transfer window was gonna mount more pressure on Levy. I think this says this is the ball back in Ange's court now. He said that he was waiting for players. Now Levy's done some deals, so I think that puts a lot of pressure back on Big Ange.
Yeah. I mean, he's got Kevin Danso as well. Quality player. I've actually played against him. Yeah, he's from MK.
In Paris.
Yeah, I saw that his youth career was at MK.
He's from MK. Played against him. Quality player. You know, brilliant player. I mean, it's my rise to fame now, isn't it? But yeah, honestly, he's really good, exciting signing. Obviously, he had that stint at Southampton, which wasn't great, to be fair. He needed some more time, to get more game time, but a little bit more experience. And he went over to Germany. He got that, and of course, went over to France, and now he's back in the Premier League. So I think a great move from on that angle with Tottenham. I think Tottenham literally just getting everyone. I saw a tweet today. They're the lady you get laid with, but you don't actually get married to. They're just honestly Tottenham. You look at them, you think you're pretty, but I don't want to be with you long term. We're gonna have a good time. We'll have some fun, but that's about it. They're getting L's left, right, centre from loads of players, and Tell even rejected them beforehand.
To be honest, I think to continue with the analogy that I'd like to avoid, I think she's probably at the end of the night and she sat on the curb. I'm not sure. There's a lot of excitement there.
But honestly, we're telling him, he did reject them initially, and United were in for him, and then Bayern got greedy because obviously Tottenham were desperate. You're bidding 50 mil for a player who hasn't even had close to 50 appearances, senior appearances at this stage. And how many goals has he scored? 50 mil is crazy. You raise the market price and then Bayern think they can demand, way more than he's actually worth. And, we're going through the reports. It looks like United did want to get him on their team and then demanded for 5 million for a loan fee, which is crazy. Last time we paid 5 million for a loan fee was Falcao, when we signed him on deadline day. And you're seeing Bayern ask, for a similar price for a player who was times the player, Tel is, with the pedigree of the goal scoring, which I think is crazy. I think Tottenham just, they raised the market price. They got desperate. And so it's a straight loan as well. So it's not like he's actually going to Tottenham. It's almost like you're just loaning out the player. Hey, listen, you're not getting any game time. Go over to England, have a bit of fun, get some game time, come back, be a better player, and who knows, get back into the team. So I think for Tottenham, it's really no risk, but I guess also not major reward like long term.
I think the structure of the deal, not having a buy option or obligation to buy, was what put Tel off previously. Apparently that was the reason that he wouldn't go, because actually long term he wants to stay at Bayern. So I'm not really surprised that it's gone the way that it has with like some of the other clubs that were involved, because Arsenal were also being linked. Well, Arsenal, Manchester United also heavily linked, and obviously Tottenham as well, and he's ended up there. So, I don't know. I think it's been a strange window. I think that deal in particular is a strange one.
Yeah, I did a crying face about that, because I've said before, Arsenal needs strength. Arsenal needs strength in the left wing position. And he can play on both sides, but yeah, Arsenal needs to increase their squad depth as a minimum, but preferably a starting player on the wing. So yeah, it's a bit, but like if Tottenham are going to be over the odds for someone, then I'd rather them have him than Arsenal pay over the odds for someone that's not proven. And we know Premier League experience counts for a lot as well.
Yeah, I think the smart clubs are doing nothing, aren't they?
Well, shall we jump onto Villa quickly there?
Well,
It was so busy, and why are they? What's the rush? Like, why are they needing to be so busy this January? I've seen Disassi is potentially coming as well now.
that's going to happen as well, yeah. I don't know. I don't really know what happened. They went into the window needing competition at right back and probably a versatile forward who could help them in multiple positions. Somebody with some pace who could, who had a different kind of threat. And then all of a sudden, they signed everybody. I think selling Carlos, they didn't really expect that. And Duran as well. I don't really think they were expecting anybody to come and pay the money that was paid for him. And they couldn't really turn it down. There's been a bit of a circus surrounding him, to be honest. I think they're...
He's always seen this as a platform, right, to move on for a bigger move, although this is a bigger move in terms of money, but a huge footstep.
Yeah, I think...
in profile in football.
Well, I wasn't expecting him to go there, to be honest. When the numbers were being kicked around and Al Nassr in Saudi Arabia, one of the clubs being linked, I dismissed it, to be fair. I just did not think that he would go there. He seemed dead set on playing for a really big club in really important competitions. But yeah, I don't want to speculate as to why he went there. People can do that themselves. He was never at Villa long term, and Villa probably needed to accept that, and accept that if they got that amount of money for him now, then they could do different things within the window, and that is exactly what they've done. So they've gone and got Marcus Rashford on a loan with an option, not an obligation to buy. That's around 40 million. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. I actually think they've put themselves in quite a weird position there in terms of if he does okay, which he might do. He might get 5 goals between now and the end of the season and offer a different dimension to Villa's attack. He has a huge reputation within the game as being, an elite level player. Whether you agree with that or not is by the by, but he has that reputation. They could be going into the summer with a decision to make on whether to bring him in with the £40 million price tag and take on his contract full time. Like, he wouldn't get the level of contract that he's on at Man U, but he'd get, he would get 200 to 250k a week, I think, at Villa. And what happens then, because we've seen it before with Rashford, when he got that new deal at United, his form went off a cliff. I think there are lots of mitigating circumstances at United that everybody knows about, but it's the question of where the players stop and the ownership structure, management teams begin with United, isn't it? And I guess we're going to find out now if Rashford was the victim of that or the kind of enabler of that.
Yeah, chance to prove himself. Like he said, he's never played anywhere else. So got a lot to prove. He's got like quite a bit of nervous excitement. Actually, some of the things that he's saying around that, knowing that he's got to prove himself because he's there for a short time as well. He's making the right noises without it just being a publicity stunt. Yeah. So yeah, I'll give him a blank slate, Villa. I think had he have been playing at Everton and come through the Everton youth ranks and had the stats that he's had at United, would we be talking about him in the same way? I don't think so at all. I think Man United's badge carries a lot of weight still.
Yeah, wouldn't just say the badge, to be fair. I think, in the past, he's definitely proven himself. It's easy to forget he's an England international. He scored goals in the biggest stages. In the Euros, he scored the free kick. I remember against Wales, broke the deadlock, and he scored some brilliant goals for England as well. We can't forget the night in Paris, where he scored the winning penalty. He's a big game player. And when we even go back to his stats versus the top six, it's really impressive. The big games he shows up. So, of course, the past couple seasons, 2.5 seasons, should we say, he hasn't been his best. But he's still a quality player. So I feel like there's still a lot he's got to offer. There will definitely be a chip on the shoulder, going to Villa. And Villa have done brilliantly. Asensio as well. Also, it's like you're losing Durant, but you're bringing in some quality players who should be playing the Champions League. Asensio, Rashford. Who was the last attacker they brought in?
Marlon as well.
Yeah, Marlon as well from Dortmund. So I think that's proper business, that is, and they're clearly making signs of a club ready to compete in the Champions League. Gone through to knockout stages and now gotten proper signings as well to compete with the big boys. And I think Villa might cause some upsets moving forward.
I think they've strengthened.
Yeah, I think when you look at the ones who have gone out, so Duran's gone, Buendia's gone. I feel like there's somebody else who's gone as well. Carlos, obviously, at the back. I'm just going to refer to the WhatsApp group.
And Bailey's still there.
That, as you can imagine, has been popping off for the last 3 or 4 days. So this might be a scroller.
I've seen a couple of minutes there. You've completed the deal for Desazi from Chelsea as well.
Yeah.
So exciting for Villa in that front. So I think you've got some quality players.
I think he was important to get, actually. And I don't know a lot about him. I've only seen, I think I watched the FA Cup game against Leicester last season where he lobbed his own keeper from 45 yards. I think my opinion of him might over-index on that. But yeah, they definitely needed somebody at the back. I think it would have been borderline negligent to not have done that, to have sold Carlos like halfway through the window and not done. And not got somebody in. So
it looks like Guehi was on the market as well as Disasi, but it looks like Crystal Palace have probably set the price a little bit too high, both for Tottenham and for Villa.
Yeah,
be in for them both.
Tottenham putting a bid of 70 mil over the weekend, and Palace rejected it. So it's crazy, man. The prices you see in these players. My goodness, Brighton. With what's his name? The winger,
the Japanese fella.
Yeah, the Japanese fella. Saudi put in a bid of 90 mil and they rejected it. Mitoma. Crazy.
I feel like they're too smart to do that. Sure.
That's audacious, idiotic in my view. And now you go on the weekend and lose 5-0. You accept bids like that. It made no sense. And I think that changes the market moving forward as well. For Brighton to be able to reject a bid as 90 mil even shows you the amount of money that these Premier League clubs have, at their disposal to be able to say no to 90 mil for Mitoma. It's just crazy. And we're struggling to get 50 mil or 40 mil for Rashford.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
It would have left Brighton light though, because they obviously have Ferguson as well.
90 mil.
Because he's not Yeah, I know, but they wouldn't have had time to bring anyone else in now. Like, they're competing then in the market with everyone else for all of these forwards, and none of them are really moving.
Yeah,
So
yeah, but for a team like Brighton, you're not competing for Champions League. You're not.
No,
You're not gonna. There's no
you're not
chance of
going
you getting
down.
relegated.
Mm.
You're a mid-table team at this stage. 90 mil. That does a lot for you back for the bank moving
it's
forward and for next season.
It's not like they haven't got players. They've
Yeah,
got tons
exactly.
of those types of players. He's not even. I feel like he's not really hit the heights that he did. Was
This
it early last season or
Yeah.
late the season before, where he really was lighting it up, basically? And yeah, I think he's not quite hitting those levels. So I'm surprised they didn't take that. But then you also look at Ferguson going to West Ham on loan. Like, people were talking about huge numbers for him a few years ago. So I don't know. I don't know if Brighton are just like losing their touch a little bit in terms of it's hard to keep up that constant sell a player, buy someone who's just as impactful for nowhere near as much money. It's hard to keep doing that. So I wonder if they've just got a couple wrong the last couple of windows.
was defo side of the book.
Mm. And
they're
like,
spending 35% of this window's transfer budget with Man City.
yeah, what's going on there?
They obviously know something we don't about their future and financial fair play. So I would say that I don't think they would be doing this if they were in trouble financially.
I mean, to be fair, they haven't, like, their net spend is actually pretty good compared
It
to.
always is. City's always
They
is.
sell really well over the summer. They didn't really buy much players. Like, they sold some top players for some good money in the past. Mahrez, paying for about 50 mil. Sold Sterling, as well for, was it 50, 40 mil, or was it loaned to obligation to buy? I can't even remember. Oh, actually, sold into was it
He went
Chelsea?
to Chelsea, didn't he? Yeah.
Exactly. So they sold, some top players for some good money, and they're not like. You also got to remember, like, getting to City teams hard anyway. So if you're going to buy players, you're probably looking north of that 60, 70 mil, and they've done really well to bring in Mamouche from the German league. He was an exciting player. Watching him play this season, he's been really good. So I think he'll be a top signing for them as well.
I think the prices are interesting. I think like that Marmouche does look, he looks sharp, but they paid a lot for him. They paid more than anybody else was going to pay for him. That's what makes me think that there's something not very City about this January shopping spree that they've been on. Like, I think they spent 40 million euros on the 18-year-old right back from Palmeiras as well.
Yeah, Vitor Reis.
Yeah. Obviously, Marmouche was 75. There was a lot on the centre half as well.
Gonzalez or Kusanov.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kusanov has now come in and is playing, and Marmouche has started both games as well. Like you said, he has looked sharp. He's looked sharp, and still, like, when they're playing against Arsenal, they were playing their new system, it seemed like, and they were doing it pretty well.
Yeah. But don't you think it's a bit of a strange market for them to be shopping in as well? Like, I didn't see that. I mean, look, I'm not going to profess to have my finger on the pulse in terms of the big players in world football, but I didn't really see anybody else being linked with these guys. It's not like they were fending other clubs off to get them. So, yeah, from what you said, Femi, around like their business in the summer, where maybe they were a little bit tentative and they didn't do that much, to then go into this January and be as bullish as they have been, something's changed. Somebody knows something, or they've just been spooked by their form. I don't know, but that doesn't really strike me as a very City thing to have.
Yeah, slightly reactive window, I'd say, and that's definitely not City. You'd expect it from the other side of Manchester, who decided to sign no one, so should be an interesting couple months.
That's similar down here in London, mate.
Well, I mean, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, you're
down there in London, you're second.
You're second, and
we're in Manchester. They are very much not second.
Yeah, but Arsenal are second, but not challenging. So neither of us are going to win the Prem this year. One of them is on better form. However, Arsenal are pretty much out of every tournament. They won't win the Champions League. They might have a good run in the Champions League, might get through another couple of rounds, but they're not going to win the Champions League.
I would say they're challenging. I mean, there's only one other team, and the gap's still single digits. It's what, 6 points?
Yeah, that can turn around.
Can turn around.
Well, 6 points with a game.
Really
And that Liverpool nearly got
game is next week, and it's against the rejuvenated David Moyes-led Everton
yeah.
after the Carabao Cup and then an FA Cup game at the weekend.
So yeah, that's massive. I think Arsenal still have a chance. It's not the least not
Not over.
Yeah, well, City probably say
Thanks for the pep talk, guys.
Well, I'm surprised you needed the pep talk after hammering
honestly,
City.
you'd be City
No,
fan
it was, yeah, I mean,
with you
yeah,
lot.
yeah, it's nice to do that, and Arsenal can win, sure, but we also know that they can throw it away as well. And you're only ever one injury away, and you've seen Arsenal for the last 3 years be in this second, third position. So you get very familiar with being a runner-up and not a win.
Yeah, but we have also seen Arsenal for the last 2 to 3 seasons be very strong second half of the season. You know, they were last season. You know, the only time they dropped points last season was at home to Villa, and other than that, they were pretty much perfect, weren't they? So, I think that's in their favour. We've talked about the fixtures, haven't we? We've talked about the fact that
They're favourable.
yeah, the fixtures favour them when you compare them to Liverpool's. Still got to go to Anfield, is that right? That's obviously going to be pivotal, but yeah, I think they'll have come away from this weekend having responded to Liverpool winning again at home to City, having responded like that, Arsenal at home to City, that is. I think there'll be some belief.
A bit of resilience against Girona in the Champions League as well. Coming through that game, automatically qualifying, it gives you a lot of breathing room. Like I said, they're pretty much out of every other cup. They've got the second leg with Newcastle when they're 2-0 down. Anything's possible. Like, you can beat City 5-1, then you can beat Newcastle 3-1, 4-1. Maybe not.
I'm really looking forward to
League Cup yet.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to those 2 League Cup games this week. I mean, the League Cup gets a bad rap, in my opinion. I mean, it's probably because it's the only trophy that I've seen Villa win that it holds a particular place in my heart. But yeah, I feel like people just shun it. But these 2 semi-finals, being poised the way that they are as well, I think is great for the competition. 2 big games this week.
Yeah, I would say in the last couple of years, teams have taken it more seriously, and you've seen first teams play, at least first team rotation happening, rather than it just being the kids.
Yeah, it's not the Wenger years of literally putting 18 and 19-year-olds into the side, is it? So, yeah, I think, and it's not like, I think the other thing that makes it really interesting is that Tottenham and Newcastle haven't won anything for so long. You know, like 2 really good sides on their day and whatever, good cup teams, I guess. And there's not many good cup teams these days. Like Tottenham were always called a good cup team back in the late 20th century and whatever. But yeah, they, on their day now, there's more clubs who can beat anyone. So yeah, I'm looking forward to those games.
So that's coming up next. In terms of fixtures that don't mean a lot, we are in a cricket
Let's talk about
window.
those.
Yeah, well, we're in a cricket window at the moment where you have these little like one-day T20 series against, I'd say, a random team. It's like the world's best team. You play this little mini series just before a World Cup is about to happen.
Yeah.
It feels very odd that they've squeezed in this, and I don't think it does the sides any good in terms of form either. Playing in a different format, one, but then also travelling, being away from home, the preparation for the tournament, and then also like England did do this weekend, getting your pants absolutely pulled down is
for morale, dragging on against a part-time medium slow bowler.
Yeah, certainly against some of the younger ones in the India team as well that just teed off. I was saying earlier about Abhishek Sharma, but it was also many others in the team throughout the 5 games that are just been smashing England's best bowlers all around the park. And like we said, no confidence whatsoever. So, I mean, India got an absolute monster score, 247 for 9, with Abhishek Sharma hitting nearly double the amount of sixes than he did fours. He hit 13 sixes in his 135 off 54 balls, which is ridiculous scoring. But yeah, some of the bowling figures were just absolutely awful. I mean, Jamie Overton, who's not looked like an international bowler because of this series, he was going at 16 and over. Jofra Archer, probably England's best bowler, went at 13 and a half. Adil Rashid, who's known for being able to control an end, even in the shorter format of the game, was going at 13 and over as well. Just really embarrassing. And then you move on to England's batters. And other than Phil Salt, who needed an innings and got 55, only one other player got double figures, and that was Jacob Bethel. Yeah, to see so many single figure scores and England be all out for 97 and beat 150 in the T20, it's just embarrassing.
Single scores from big players as well. Like Livingston's a specialist in this code. Brook, we've talked about him as being the best batsman in the world at the moment on the stats and whatever. And you've got Josh Butler and Duckett in there as well. Like, these are England's best batters. Yeah, a real trouncing. So this is in the build-up to...
Yeah, for the ICC Champions Trophy, 50 overs starts. Might still start in Feb. Yeah, it does. It starts right at the end of Feb. So in 3 weeks' time, England have got their first game against Australia. So yeah, having played this T20 series, they're now going to go into a 50 over series. So they are actually going to play a couple of 50 overs against India, but they played these T20 fixtures first, which just makes no sense at all. They could have had more rest and prep at home, gone out to India, played a couple of one-day tests, and then gone to Pakistan and played the tournament. And I think it would have been in a better position, but I think it's probably TV rights talking.
Yeah, that's the thing with cricket, and especially cricket in the Southern Hemisphere, isn't it? It's like...
Cricket in India, what do we say, Femi? 1 billion Indians, can't be wrong. I was telling Femi, Joel, when I was in India, I saw a tourist T-shirt that said, "Visit India, 1 billion Indians, can't be wrong."
Very good.
So yeah, ICC Champions Trophy, end of the month, which will be a great tournament with Australia, England not so much, but they are on form. Last time they played 50 overs, however, apparently not in 20 overs. Then South Africa, we've spoken about them last week in the quiz as being one of the top 3 test teams. Their test side's not too similar to their 50 over side, so they should be incredibly strong. It's at home for Pakistan, and we know what their bowlers can do, and they've got some very strong batsmen too, so expect them to go very far and deep. So I think it's going to be a really competitive tournament, and it's just a shame that we're squeezing so much more cricket in before the tournament takes place.
Speaking of competitive tournaments,
I thought you were going to say, speaking of squeezing lots of fixtures into a week. And yeah.
Rugby.
Yeah, I was going to chat rugby. Six Nations.
Okay. It's competitive for France and Ireland, I think it will be. I think that, so it was to run chronologically through the weekend. Wales went away to France to play in Paris and got handily beaten. What's the actual score off the top of my head? Maybe like 48-0 off the top of my head. 43-0, sorry.
On Friday night, this was, isn't it?
Friday night, which is great spectacle. Hearing the Marseillaise ring out around the stadium, it's a very big fixture on paper historically. However, Welsh rugby, since Warren Gatland, their coach, left the first time, probably about 2017, has just been on a downward trajectory, and now he's returned to try and revive them, and they just don't have they've not got the depth.
They haven't responded, have they, since he's been back?
Not at all. And him as one of the world's best and most famous coaches really puts his reputation on the line. Getting nilled is very, very embarrassing. We've spoken about the strength of their league before versus the English Premiership. We'll now compare that to the Welsh regions, and where you've just got a handful of teams, and Welsh players to play for the national side have to play for one of the region's teams. So it just doesn't build up a lot of depth or experience in the squad.
And
Because they're big players, leave. Then moving on to Saturday, we had Scotland versus Italy. Italy have got a chance this year to not win the wooden spoon and pass that mantle on to Wales, probably, hopefully, because it would be good for the tournament, because Italy have been in it for 30 years and have pretty much won the wooden spoon every single year. But they've got some very good players that are playing good rugby at the moment, and expect that they could turn Wales over, which would be great for the tournament. However, it was Scotland, who have previously been wooden spoon winners, and Italy ran them close, which was good, and it's good for the tournament, good for the competitiveness. However, it never looked like they would win. It always looked like Scotland would have enough. And then into England, Ireland.
same old story for England.
Well, I mean, I was at Twickenham last year for England versus Ireland, where England won it with a Marcus Smith drop goal in the last few moments of the game, and it could have gone both ways, and that's at home. But going away to Ireland is a different challenge altogether. And this England team under Steve Borthwick are not getting results, even when they're in close games.
Side, aren't they?
They are always coming out with a loss.
How much of what happened on Saturday, looking at Saturday in isolation, was down to the physicality of the game and just not being able to keep that up? Because I mean, I'm not a rugby aficionado, but I think it was the 40th minute, and England looked out on their feet. I mean, they'd been down a man for a few minutes, but they looked like they were really struggling with the intensity of the game.
Well, England lost their defensive coach. I say lost, he quit last year, and was on gardening leave, but he is going to Ireland. So we're at that island now. So that defence they had that they used to do was a rush defence or a blitz defence, where they would charge straight up and out, and a lot of the time that shut the play down, but it's exhausting to play in that way. We now have a up and drift defence, which is better, and I think it suits England well. And you saw that, like you said, first 40 minutes, but high intensity. England's defence is very high intensity, and it looked like they just couldn't keep it up, especially, as you said, when they went down to 14 men, where Marcus Smith got sinned in for the last 10 minutes of the first half. And I think they'll learn from that and play better against France next week, but still won't beat France next week. And then it just comes down to who wins between England and Scotland for who takes third place in the tournament. But I think it's, France and Ireland have got it sewn up. But England best players aren't playing in England is a massive issue.
Yeah.
We know Owen Farrell's at Racing in Paris, and we've got Jack Willis, one of the best flankers in the world, who's actually in the French club team of the year, isn't available for selection for England. So he will go away with the British and Irish Lions when they tour in Australia in the summer, but he's not eligible for selection for England. It's just balmy. That rule's supposed to keep players in England and strengthen the English club game. But with that rule in place, the English club game has never been weaker.
Mm.
We've had three teams that have gone under in the last couple of years.
Yeah. It's an English rugby rule, right? It's not an internationally implied rule.
Yeah, in some. So you have it in Wales as well. That's why they have it to try and strengthen the Welsh regions, but it doesn't work. It's not working in England, and it's not working in Wales. It was really good to watch still. Like, England playing that defensive way was really good. And in the first half, they played with a lot more freedom, but it seemed as the game developed and they were trying to protect the score and then chase the score, they just went into their shells a little bit. But initially, I think, the way England were playing was very good. What I was going to ask you guys, so I felt like it was the players' fault. It was either their fitness or their heads went when they lost their fitness towards the end of the first half and secondly in the second. So it looked like the way that Steve Borthwick set the team out to play was evident from the initial kickoff. And then it seemed the same to draw the parallel with Man City. The way Pep had them set up and were playing, they were able to keep to the system and contain Arsenal for the first 50, 60 minutes. But then in that last half an hour, I don't know if it was their legs or their heads, but it seems similarly to happen to them. And it seems like it's a players thing. When the start of the game happens, that's kind of the impact of the coach, how I see it. And then as you get towards the end of the game, you're kind of leaving it to the players.
I would agree with that. If they're making big errors in the second half, like you say, big defensive errors in the second half, I think that points to both a mental and physical, or physical fatigue. Like the probably that 10 minutes down to 14 men, it has a big impact. That's quite a big chunk of the game, isn't it? So, especially when Ireland are fresh still and putting on a lot of pressure, they had a lot of the ball in that first half in particular. I think that showed.
So this weekend then, in the Six Nations, as I said, so England at home against France. Italy, as I said, attempting to not take home the wooden spoon. They're at home to Wales, so expecting really big things. And I'll be packing my team, my fantasy team, with Italians for this weekend. And then Scotland are hosting Ireland. It's not a done deal for Ireland that they can go away and win at Scotland with one of the world's best fly halves in Tim Russell, I think, and some of the best wingers in Dawson Graham and Blair Kinghorn, who plays at 15, who's also one of the French best top 15 and top 14 French players too. And also they've got Duan van der Merwe, a very Scottish name, on the other wing. They could tear Ireland apart in terms of scoring tries. So it might be who can score most. So 3 really big fixtures in terms of competition for the Six Nations.
Should we do the big NBA trade?
Massive.
NBA trade.
Massive NBA trade.
Well, I start by saying I didn't see AD going anywhere.
I'm going to need full names.
Anthony Davis. So he swapped. They've done a swap. So Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic. Doncic, who's been one of the top, if not the top, players in the NBA for the last few years, have basically swapped. So Doncic was playing for the Dallas Mavericks and has now gone to LA Lakers and going the other way. Anthony Davis, who's possibly one of the best LA Lakers at the moment, has gone the other way to Dallas.
Why is my big question.
Honestly, it is like Mbappe at PSG, swapping for Van Dijk. That's the best way I can put it.
Yeah, fairly similar. LA Lakers just like collecting names.
So they're very different players then, is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, they're very different players. Anthony Davis is he's a defensive juggernaut. Like, he is top 3 defensive players in the NBA for me. Now my problem is he's 30. Like, he's 30, and in NBA terms, he's got what, 4 or 5 years left?
He's going to be 32 in March.
So 30, there you go. So, and you've got a 25-year-old in Luka Doncic who's still in his prime and he's just gone to the NBA Finals. They were literally in the NBA Finals last year, and they've gone from being in NBA Finals to, trading your best player. And to me, it makes no sense. I've done some research on the executive who made the trade, Nico Harrison. And so before Steph Curry signed for Nike, before he signed for Under Armour, Nike was the big, the big ones after him. Nico Harrison was in charge of making the presentation for Steph Curry, and he called him Seth Curry. During the interview. Only that, did he use the same presentation he had for Kevin Durant the previous year for Steph Curry. So already, it will tell you that this is someone, who has a few, screw ups, in his armory as well. So in my view, and, he's come out now, we asked him question, why did you make the trade? He said, as they say, defense. Defense wins championships. He believes that the team needs to be more defensive, needs a defensive juggernaut like Anthony Davis to win championships. And interestingly, he said, they're built to win now. And now for him is the next 3-4 years. I'm thinking, mate, you just signed a 32-year-old player who's injury prone. Fair enough, brilliant player. On this day, Anthony Davis is one of the best players in the NBA. But you already have one of the best players in the NBA, like, without a doubt. It's not an equal trade. It's nowhere near an equal trade. No one could. The reason people were so shocked is because it just doesn't make sense. It shouldn't have happened. But it did. This is someone clearly, this is an executive who wants to make a name for himself. Granted, if it works out, if they win a championship off the back of this, then, no one's going to remember the trade. Everyone's going to remember what amazing job he's done. But they're not going to win a championship off the back of this. You can't trust Anthony Davis to stay fit. There was question marks about Luka Doncic's his weight, talking about he's hit 270. Mate, he's 6'7". I'd hope he's at 270. So, it just makes no sense. I think...
Not kilos, right?
No, sure not. But yeah, it just, it doesn't make sense. I think that the trade was someone who
Still 150.
Yeah,
He's a big boy.
He's a big boy. Ego-driven. I think...
He's the 6th youngest player to score 10,000 points.
He scored 70 points in an NBA game.
He's the 7th fastest.
70 points in one game?
Yes.
You want some stats? His career high is 73 points.
Actually,
What?
it was 3.
He's done it twice.
Yeah. Not just that. Against the New York Nets a couple of years ago, he got a triple-double where he got 60 points. Getting a triple-double when you get 60 points is incredibly hard because that means you've
Unheard of.
10 assists to someone else as well. And it's
Unheard of.
absolutely mental. Anyway, triple-doubles. He's top 10 all-time already for triple-doubles. He's on over 60. His points per game average, what would you say is good? If someone hits 25 points in a game, it's a really good game. His average is 28 points per game. It's absolutely insane. And his
league scoring last year.
35%. His field goal percentage is 2.46%. Absolutely insane. He's mental.
He's the sort of player who goes into games and you give him the ball because you just know he's going to do something special.
And the fact that the trades happen now, Joel, LA Lakers are serious contenders to win the NBA championship this year. No doubt. This is totally changed the season's trajectory for them.
I do think they need a center, though, because obviously losing Anthony Davis, he didn't even want to play the center position, and he was almost forced to play there. But I still think they need a center. But, mate, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, oddly enough, actually, I think they might struggle to fit because they're similar players. You might see similar to what we had with Russell Westbrook and LeBron James. They can be smart players, don't get me wrong, way higher IQ than Westbrook for sure. He's my favorite player. But, one of them's, there's only one basketball. One of them's going to have to sit off. One of them's going to have to let the other dictate the pace and, just sit. And for me, I think it's the first time in LeBron's career where I feel like he has to take the back step. It's no longer his team. And that's saying something I thought
And that's part of it, Joel. That's probably a part of it is they've got someone for the next 5 years that is going to be the
minimum 10. If he stays, actually no, maybe not 10. With his injury record, fair enough. 5.
And his size apparently, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. His conditioning, honestly, the most shocking trade I've ever seen in basketball, in any sport.
I mean, so we know how transfers are in the football world nowadays. You basically know what's going to happen probably a few days before it does happen. It gets repeated. Every kind of stage of the transfer is heavily reported upon, interest, agreed a fee, agreed personal terms, whichever way around those things come, medical and all done. And then it gets announced or whatever. Where it sounds like this one came completely out of the blue. But how do you do that in the world of social media?
I mean, so both executives literally, apparently, so Rob Pelinka is the executive on the other side for the Lakers. And so Nico Harrison said to him, would you be open to taking, Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis? And apparently Rob Pelinka said to him, he thought it was crazy, thought he was joking. Of course he think he was joking. It was like, it's just saying in jest until things got, pretty serious. Now, the way basketball also works is before you make a trade, unofficially, you let your star player know. Yeah, listen, we're looking to get this player, what are your thoughts about it? Because obviously that's your star player. You want to make them happy. Would it be a good fit? And LeBron James, he's the face of the NBA. He had no idea this trade was happening.
Crazy.
No one, not even the coach. And there's probably, I think there's more to it than just, what's being said, about his weight, because it makes no sense. Has he got a gambling problem? Has he got a debt to pay or something? Is he in alcohol? There's got to be something.
Because you have to get out of Dallas, is that what you're saying?
Mate,
No, it's not. Yeah, I think there's a lot of allegiance. There's a lot of allegiance in basketball. Some players have it less, and move around an awful lot, where the money is. Slovenia, he's probably not as emotionally tied to a specific team. However, the brand of the Lakers would have been enormous. And at this point in his career, to make that move and know the money that he's going to get paid, I think can understand why for him. For the Mavs, obviously didn't make any sense, and they needed to get a lot of players in return, and they have done. However, it's not.
nowhere
This
close.
is not. This isn't fair. This
It is not a fair trade. Not even close. Not even close. Not even close. I can't.
they also traded and got some picks. Did they get? Did I see
You
they
know
also they're taking first round pick or something as well? But in
Yeah,
for like 2030,
Say that again?
in like the
Yeah.
2030 draft, they've
Usually,
taken a first round pick.
usually when you make a trade like this, you literally send probably like 8, 9 picks, 6, or even your 6, 7 picks for Rudy Gobert, who is not. He's not half the player Luka Doncic is. You know, they must have send like 6, 7 picks for him. And for Luka, they were probably thinking it would take like 2 star players, 8 picks or something just to get a player like that. Mark Cuban, who used to be the majority owner of Dallas Mavericks, they asked him a question: who would you pick, Luka Doncic or your wife? And he said his wife better get ready for divorce. She better get ready to sign a divorce paper. That's how much he rated him. But obviously, at this stage, he sold majority shares of a majority of his shares with the Dallas Mavericks, and some else has come in and taken control, as you can clearly see. And and you sell a prized asset like that. He's a generational player. To get a generational player at this stage of his career and to trade him for not nothing, but pretty much nowhere near the value, return is crazy. And I am interested to see, how things unfold. I don't think Nicole, whatever his name is, very long. I think it's ego driven, and he will pay for it.
Here is a big transfer pod. So yeah, watch this space. FA Cup and League Cup fixtures to come in the football. We'll see how Doncic and AD get on at their new teams. Six Nations, we've already spoken about the features upcoming, so we will catch you on the next one. You can like, subscribe on Spotify and YouTube, and get in touch at allsportspods@gmail.com, and we will catch you on the next one. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, man.
Yes.